Hey everybody, Brad Hunter here, back with some more data and analysis for you, adding more evidence to back up a forecast we've been using for the past 2 or 3 years. I want to show all of you some new data on supply and demand for apartments and BTR. Now, we've been talking about the impending drop-off in deliveries, which is the supply side, but let's focus now more on the demand side. Today, I want to share with you some data on rental absorptions from Cushman and Wakefield's latest report and on underlying household demand data based on the latest report and forecasts from the Harvard Joint Center for Housing Studies. It's great to have their perspective. I love data, but they dig even deeper into data and analysis and modeling than we do in my shop. So the key thing to know is that absorption for rentals remains extremely strong. In fact, it's at the strongest level in 25 years. More than 116,000 units were absorbed nationwide just in apartments in the second quarter of 2025, just in that 3 month period. And year to date, that's 216,000, but that's a very strong quarter. And the last several quarters have been quite strong. I want to show you some data here. This is the data from Cushman and Wakefield on the number of apartment units under construction, and it's fallen very sharply since the peak back in 2023. Not only that, but again, 116,000 units absorbed in the second quarter alone, fewer than 500,000 remain under construction today. But now let's take that and combine that data with the latest from the Harvard Joint Center for Housing Studies. Now, the Harvard Joint Center just had a webinar last week. I attended online and asked a question, and they spent a lot of time answering my question. And there's a few things that came out of it that I think are really important for me to pass on to you. So it really relates to the family renters, household formations, and the demand for BTR. So one of the questions that I asked had to do with household formation rates are slowing down because population growth is slowing down. But we know that household formation rates are slowing down partly because the baby boomers are starting to get into their 80s and beyond, and that population is naturally going to decrease in size over time. That doesn't really affect housing demand very much. It affects supply a little bit, but the demand is really coming from people in their 30s and 40s, and household formations are still happening at a pretty good pace among those age groups. So here's what Dan McHugh told me in answer to my question. He said, we're losing a lot of older adult households, those are their 80 plus. So it's not that formations are slowing per se, we're losing more households, but we're going to continue to gain the same number of younger households coming online that we had been doing. So that's powerful. And then he went on to say that's going to shape the demand for new construction. So it is going to continue to be supportive of housing demand for new construction of all types, rental, for sale, the whole gamut, because those younger households are still happening and people are forming households. So the other thing that we talked about was family-oriented households. So here's what Dan said. He said, we have growth in households with children. We have a lack of access to home ownership that leads to a lot of middle-aged renters. It's just a mathematical thing for us, he said. It can lead to higher demand in the rental market for the needs of rental households with children, which we've seen. That plays itself out in the demand for single-family rentals. A lot of you know that I tend to talk about single-family rentals a lot. I did not prompt him with that in my question. He just went there, and I knew that that's where he was headed because when you're talking about family renters, apartments aren't going to cut it for a good portion of them. So BTR demand is going to remain strong. Household-driven demand is going to remain strong, particularly for those people that he calls middle age. I'll say they're people in their 30s and 40s. So that's going to continue to be in place while we see this dramatic drop off in deliveries of BTR units and of apartment units over the next 18 months. So there's a need for more units because demand is going to remain high based on household formation rates, based on the shortage of housing that exists in the market. And we're going to also see this drop off in deliveries. It's going to be very, very dramatic. And so it's going to create an opportunity to serve the market in a way that it needs to be served, which is to provide more rental units over the next 18 months because very few, relatively speaking, are going to be delivered relative to the demand. So there's going to be an opportunity to make money, do well by doing good. And so that's the key message here. Stick around for more. We'll be back soon. Thank you.